Eli Mercer found her just before dawn, when the desert still held its breath, and the sky was bruised purple along the horizon. He had ridden this road 1,000 times, past the sagging fence posts and the rusted mailbox that marked the edge of his land. But that morning his horse stopped so suddenly it nearly threw him. The animal snorted and shifted, refusing to go closer. That was when Eli saw her shape in the half-light and felt his stomach turn cold. A girl was tied upright against his mailbox, her small body held in place with baling wire and coarse rope. Her head lolled slightly to one side, dark hair tangled and stiff with dust and dried blood. Her legs hung unnaturally straight beneath her, boots barely touching the ground, as if they had never been meant to carry her weight. Someone had pressed a piece of cardboard into her hands. The words scrawled in thick black ink, "Joke of the Week." The wind tugged at the sign, making it creak softly against her chest. Eli dismounted without thinking. His hands shook as he reached for his knife, anger and disbelief burning together in his chest. Up close, he could see the details that hurt the most. The faded beadwork necklace around, her neck cracked but carefully tied, the bruises blooming along her arms, the quiet steadiness in her eyes. She didn't cry out when he cut the wire. She didn't speak. She only watched him, as if measuring whether he was another danger or something else entirely. When Eli lifted her, he realized how light she was. Too light. Her body sagged against him, her legs unmoving. An understanding struck him like a blow. Still, he held her firmly, wrapping his coat around her shoulders to shield her from the cold morning air. As he turned back toward his horse, her fingers twitched and caught weakly in the fabric of his sleeve, a fragile grip that said more than words ever could. Eli looked once more at the empty road stretching toward town, at the place where laughter and cruelty had been left behind like trash. He didn't wait for the sun to rise or for someone else to take responsibility. He mounted carefully, keeping her close, and rode back toward his ranch. That morning, the mail stayed in the box. Whatever business the world thought it had with him could wait. He was carrying something far more important home. Eli laid Nita gently on the spare bed in the corner of the house, the one his late wife used whenever she needed relief from pain. The room smelled faintly of lavender and old wood, a comfort he hoped she would notice. He cleaned the dried blood from her hair and face with careful hands, speaking softly, telling her she was safe now, though she didn't respond. She simply watched him, dark eyes alert and unyielding, like she was trying to memorize every move, every sound, every detail of the place she had been brought to. Her body, paralyzed from the waist down, didn't allow her to shift or follow, but her gaze was full of quiet intelligence, like nothing could go unnoticed. Eli prepared a simple meal and set it within reach, propping a cup of water on the nightstand. He called the local clinic, arranging for a doctor to come by. When the physician arrived, he confirmed Eli's suspicion. Nita's injuries had long healed poorly, leaving her unable to move her legs. She had been living this way for some time, alone and unprotected. The doctor's words were soft, but the implication harsh. She had been abandoned. Eli felt the weight of it settle on his shoulders like a stone, heavy and unyielding. For days, Nita didn't speak. She watched Eli work around her, tending the house and the small garden outside, feeding the chickens, stacking firewood. She flinched when trucks passed along the distant highway, but gradually the familiarity of Eli's voice and movements seemed to anchor her in a way she hadn't experienced in months, maybe years. One afternoon, she tried to lift herself with trembling arms, wincing with effort, beads of sweat forming on her forehead. Eli rushed to support her, steadying her, his hands firm but gentle. "You don't have to prove anything here," he whispered. Her eyes met his, and for the first time there was a glimmer of recognition, a flicker of something beyond fear and survival. A rough, hoarse sound emerged from her throat, the first word she had uttered since he found her. "Nita," she said, the single word rolling out like a secret finally spoken aloud. Eli repeated it softly, feeling the weight and meaning behind it. He realized then that she was not broken. She was not a victim to pity. She was a survivor, quiet but unyielding, and the name she spoke carried with it the strength and pride of a life that had been denied respect until now. For the first time, both of them allowed themselves to hope that perhaps the world could be different here, in this small desert home. Eli learned the story of Nita slowly, in fragments and careful observations. She did not volunteer her past, and he did not push her, but the truth unfolded in small gestures. The way she flinched at sudden noises, the scars hidden beneath her sleeves, the meticulous care she took with her few belongings. She had been injured months earlier, struck by a car near the edge of the reservation. There had been no witnesses willing to come forward. No charges pressed and no one to watch over her while she healed. The joke at the mailbox was not the first cruelty she had endured, but it would be the last she would suffer while under Eli's roof. The desert town had its opinions. Neighbors whispered when Eli drove her to town, or when he brought her to the clinic, or when he visited the tribal council to explain what had happened. Some laughed when they saw the boys who had tied her up, dismissing the cruelty as youthful mischief. Others muttered about Eli bringing trouble into his home. But Eli stood firm. He filed reports, insisted on accountability, and refused to let Nita be silenced again. The boys who had laughed at her fear were suddenly faced with consequences. And the laughter faded as quickly as it had begun. The weight of responsibility pressed on them in ways they hadn't expected. Over time, life at the ranch began to change. Eli built a wooden ramp to the porch, wide and sturdy, allowing Nita to move with some independence. She learned the land in her own way, tending herbs and small plants by the window, watching the horses with fascination, and listening to Eli's stories about the desert nights and the stars above. Slowly, her trust in the world returned. She laughed quietly at little things, like the goat tipping over its water bucket, or the way Eli cursed when he misjudged a fence post. And in those moments, Eli saw the girl who had been silent, still and frightened, now learning to move forward in a world that had once been cruel to her. One evening, Nita presented Eli with a small carved bear, smooth and worn from handling. She placed it in his hand and said softly, "In my culture, family isn't just blood. It's those who protect you." Eli felt something settle deep in his chest, a quiet affirmation that the desert had given them both a second chance. The mailbox at mile 7, once a symbol of cruelty and mockery, had become a marker of something far stronger: resilience, compassion, and the unbreakable bond forged between two people determined to survive and to care for one another. The desert had taken much from them both, but in the end, it had also given them a home,